There's a confession sitting in someone's chest right now, and it's been sitting there long enough that it has weight to it, physical weight. The kind you feel when you take a deep breath and something in the middle of you doesn't fully expand the way it should. The kind that makes certain conversations slightly harder to be present in because part of your attention is always on the thing you're not saying. They want to tell you something. They've wanted to tell you something for a while, and the reason they haven't, the reason this truth has been living in them unspoken, turning over and over in the particular way that unsaid things turn, isn't simple. I want to be precise about that because I think the easy explanation, the one that would make this cleaner and more comfortable, doesn't actually capture what's happening. It's not that they don't care enough to be honest. It's almost the opposite. Let me describe what this person's internal experience has been, because I think it matters for how you receive what's coming. And because I think understanding it, not excusing it, understanding it is going to help you navigate what happens when it finally arrives. They've been in a state of genuine conflict, not the performed kind, not the conflict of someone who knows exactly what they want and is simply delaying saying it for strategic reasons. The real kind, the kind that sits in your chest at 2 a.m. and doesn't resolve neatly no matter how many times you go around it. Because here's what I keep getting when I sit with their energy. They want you. That part is not complicated. That part is actually the clearest thing about this entire situation, a wanting that has been present and consistent and not particularly subject to doubt, not a passing interest, not a casual attraction, something more insistent than that, more rooted. And the but is the whole story. There's something in the way, something they're looking at that creates a complication they don't know how to bring to you without risking what already exists between you. Something that makes the simple version, I want to be with you, feel incomplete, dishonest even, like saying the truest thing without saying the whole truth. And this person, and this is very specific to who they are, cannot bring themselves to give you a partial truth. Not about this. Not about you. So they've been giving you silence instead. And silence, they're beginning to understand, is its own kind of dishonesty. Hold on. Because there's something about the nature of the but that I want to try to describe without being too specific, because this varies for different people watching, and I don't want to impose a particular version of this on your situation, but with enough precision that you'll recognize it when you hear it. The but is not about you. I want to say that first and clearly because I think it's the thing you most need to hear. Whatever complication exists, whatever the obstacle is that has been standing between their wanting and their saying it, it is not a reflection of your worth, not a judgment of your adequacy, not evidence that you're not enough or not right or not what they imagined. It's something they're carrying, something in their own life, their own circumstances, their own history or situation, or the specific configuration of things that make a simple yes feel complicated in ways that have nothing to do with whether they want you. They do want you. That's not the complicated part. The complicated part is everything that surrounds the wanting, the logistics of it, the implications of it, the specific things that would have to shift or be navigated or honestly examined for the wanting to become something real rather than something that lives only in the interior. There's an image I keep seeing. Someone standing on one side of a body of water, not an ocean, something crossable, a river maybe, wide enough to require intention to cross, and on the other side, you. And they can see you clearly. The distance isn't obscuring anything. They know exactly what's over there, exactly what they want to move toward. But something about the crossing feels complicated. Not impossible, not even particularly dangerous, just complicated. There are things to account for, currents to understand. The question of whether once they've crossed, they can navigate what comes next. And they've been standing on their bank for long enough that standing there has started to feel like its own decision. Even though they never consciously chose to stay, what's shifting right now is the relationship to that standing. It's becoming unbearable in a specific way. Not dramatically, in the quiet way of someone who has looked at the same choice from every angle and run out of new perspectives, who has exhausted the supply of reasons to wait and is left with only the wanting and the question of whether the wanting is enough to move. It's enough. They're beginning to know it's enough. The more I sit with this, the more I keep finding something specific about what the but actually contains. And I want to try to describe the different forms it might be taking, because this reading is collective and what's true for one person watching won't be exactly true for another. For some of you, the but is timing, a genuine, practical complication of circumstance, something in their life that isn't resolved, a situation they're in the middle of navigating, something that would make starting something with you feel irresponsible or unfair to you when they can't yet show up in the full way they want to. And I want to say something about that version specifically. That kind of but comes from care, from the specific consideration of someone who thinks about your experience as much as their own, who doesn't want to bring you into something incomplete, who would rather wait until they can offer you something whole than reach for you while they're still fractured. That's not rejection wearing a different costume. That's someone who takes you seriously enough to not approach you carelessly. For others of you, the but is fear. And this is the version I want to stay with longest, because I think it's the most common one and the least often named, honestly. They're afraid of what happens if they tell you the truth and you don't receive it the way they're hoping. Not afraid in the shallow way. In the specific, precisely located way of someone who has identified exactly what they have to lose, who has looked at the current relationship, whatever form it takes, whatever dynamic exists between you right now, and understood that what exists is real and valuable and potentially irreplaceable, and who understands that saying, "I want to be with you," is an action that cannot be undone. Once it's said, the shape of things between you changes permanently, even if you receive it well, even if you feel the same. The saying of it makes something that was implicit explicit. And explicit things can be rejected in ways that implicit things cannot. So they've been living in the implicit, protecting what exists by not risking it. And the cost of that protection has been accumulating interest. Wait, actually, there's something underneath the fear that I wasn't expecting to find, and I want to try to describe it carefully because I think it's the deepest thing in this reading. They don't feel entirely worthy of you. And I want to be precise about how I mean that, because it's not a simple insecurity. It's not the generic low self-esteem of someone who doesn't value themselves. It's more specific than that. It's the particular feeling of someone who sees you clearly, who understands what you are, what you bring, what it would mean to be with someone who operates at your level of integrity and attention and depth, and who is looking honestly at themselves in comparison and finding a gap they don't know how to close, not because they're objectively lesser, but because loving you looks like a certain level of responsibility, a certain quality of showing up, a certain standard of honesty and consistency and care that they're not sure, not certain they're capable of sustaining. and they'd rather say nothing than say yes and then fail to be what you deserve. That's the but underneath the but. The fear that wanting you isn't the same as being ready for you. I want to talk about you now, because this reading has been about them, their conflict, their fear, their unsaid truth, and I think it's time to come back to where you actually are in this, because you've felt something, haven't you? Not the full picture, not the confession they haven't made, but the weight of it, the specific quality of being in someone's presence when they're carrying something unspoken toward you. There's a texture to that, an almost tangible thickness in certain interactions, moments that feel like they're about to become something and then don't. Silences that seem to contain more than silence usually contains. You've been feeling the edges of this for a while, and you've been doing something very Virgo with that feeling. You've been waiting for data, not impatiently, not obviously, but you've been paying attention in a specific way, tracking, noticing, building an internal picture from the available information without yet having the central piece that would make the picture coherent. And you've been careful not to project, not to assume, not to let yourself conclude something that hasn't been confirmed, because Virgo knows better than most signs how costly a wrong conclusion can be. So you've been waiting patiently, skillfully, with that particular Virgo quality of watchful stillness that looks like composure from the outside and is actually very active on the inside. The wait is almost over. There's something about the specific moment this confession arrives that I want to try to describe, because it's not going to come in the form of a prepared speech, not a message they've drafted and edited into precision, not a moment they've staged with the right setting and the right words and the right everything. It's going to be messier than that, more human. There's going to be a moment, possibly in the middle of an ordinary interaction, possibly in a pause that stretches slightly longer than pauses usually stretch, where something in them gives way, where the thing they've been holding back becomes harder to hold than to release, and what comes out is going to be imperfect, possibly halting, possibly not in the right order, possibly starting with something adjacent to the real thing before arriving at the real thing. The way people sometimes approach the thing they most need to say by circling it first, by talking around it until the circling itself becomes more effortful than just saying it. And in that moment, in that imperfect, slightly disorganized, genuinely human moment of someone finally being honest with you, I want you to resist the Virgo instinct to help them organize it, to smooth it out, to finish their sentences in the interest of efficiency. Let them be messy. Let them find their way to the real thing in their own way, because the mess is evidence of the weight of it. The difficulty of getting there is proof of how much it matters to them. Now, the but, when it arrives, when they say the thing and then the but, I want to describe what that's going to ask of you, because your first instinct might be to immediately assess whether the but is acceptable, whether it's a real obstacle or an excuse, whether the complication they're naming is something you can work with or something that means this doesn't actually go anywhere despite the wanting. And that assessment is valid. It's necessary eventually, but not immediately. In the immediate moment, in the space right after the confession and the but what's needed from you is something different. Presence, just presence. The specific quality of being fully there with someone in a moment of genuine vulnerability without immediately reaching for the analytical response, without your face communicating the evaluation before you've heard everything, without the shutting down that sometimes happens in Virgo when something threatens to be more complicated than hope They're going to need to feel that you can hold what they're telling you. Not that you agree with it, not that the but is acceptable, just that you're not going to close at the first sign of complexity. Because here's what I keep getting about this person. They're terrified of your closing more than anything else, more than rejection even. They're afraid of the specific Virgo closing where you hear something complicated and something in your eyes goes slightly distant and they understand that they've lost something they can't get back. Stay open for the duration of the conversation, then after, then the assessment. There's something I want to say about the but itself, about what to do with it once you have it. It's going to require a conversation, a real one. Not the immediate one. The initial moment of confession will have its own shape, and that shape needs to be respected. But afterward, when both of you have had time to breathe, a conversation where you get to respond honestly to what was shared, where you get to say what the but means to you, whether it changes anything, whether it's something you're willing to navigate or something that closes a door, whether the wanting on both sides is sufficient for what the navigation would require. That conversation is not going to be easy, but it's going to be real. And real conversations, even hard ones, especially hard ones, are what Virgo actually needs, what you've always needed. Not comfortable ambiguity, not managed impressions, not the performance of things being fine when they're complicated. The truth, actual truth, delivered imperfectly by someone who cares enough to try. That's what's coming. And whatever you do with it, whatever you decide, once you have all of it, you'll be deciding from a place of actual information, which is the only place worth deciding from. The last thing, I want to say something about the courage it's taking for this person to bring this to you. Because I think it's easy, especially if the but turns out to be something frustrating, something that feels like it's standing between you and what you want to focus on, the obstacle, and miss what it means that they're telling you at all. They could have stayed silent. That was the easier path. Continue as things are. Maintain the current dynamic. Let the wanting live only in them and never trouble the space between you with the risk of honesty. They're choosing not to do that. They're choosing imperfectly, nervously, with the specific vulnerability of someone who knows they're about to change something irreversibly, to tell you the truth. All of it, the wanting and the but, not just the beautiful part, the complicated part too. And that choice, the choice to be honest with you even when honesty is frightening, that says something about who they are, about how much you matter to them, about the specific kind of respect that shows up not as smooth words but as real ones. Whatever comes next, whatever the conversation holds and wherever it leads, you're being chosen as someone worth being honest with, even when the honesty is hard. Even when it comes with a but, that's not nothing. That's actually, if you let yourself see it clearly, that's someone showing you exactly who they are in one of the most human moments available. Pay attention to it, all of it. If something in this touched something true, if a moment landed somewhere you recognized, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what resonated. Even just a few words, it means more than you know.